Hi, and welcome to MasterCard Exclusive. I'm Tracy Horton, Vice President of Corporate Communications with Digital Designs. And we're here to talk about virtual payments, the trends adopting virtual payment technologies, and how most enterprises are realigning their processes for the coming year. Most of the Fortune 2000 companies, as we found in research, are adopting these technologies, and for good reasons. They're addressing problems everyone in business faces. If you want to look at what happens in mid-sized businesses, you may want to look first at what happens at the Fortune 500. You see, eventually that trickles down, and the reason it trickles down is because the technology has become more affordable now. The key reasons why companies are adopting these are what we found in research to be the reductions and overall cost, processing payments, reduction of the paper that's used in accounts payable, and better cash management. And so what we're going to talk about is how these business drivers affect business, the efficiencies that can be realized by implementing these technologies, the simplification of the work process resulting in product efficiency improvements, and in general, the improvement of quality of life at work. See, part of Digital Design's contribution is to streamline the financial accounting processes. Today's focus will be on how Digital Design simplifies virtual payment integration. And at the end of this webinar, I will show you exactly how Digital Designs can assist you and how to receive one-on-one help from us to obtain an exclusive RPMG summary, which is valued at $900. This is packed full of valuable insights about this compelling technology, and this is yours for free for attending this webinar today. Here today is our special guest, Chris Shanahan, Vice President of Business Development with MasterCard. And to begin our discussion is Miles Busby, Product Manager in Card Solutions with Digital Designs. Now I'm pleased to turn this over to Miles.
Thank you, Tracy. You mentioned Digital Design simplifies virtual payment integration. I kind of like that. It's pretty much what we're going to talk about all day today is how we can simplify the whole integration of virtual payments. And what you can expect to learn today in this brief time we're together is you're going to learn a little bit about Digital Designs. We're going to define electronic payments and how they fit into the B2B world. We're going to let you hear from an expert, Chris Shanahan, that we've already introduced, and he's from MasterCard. I'd be glad that Chris has joined us today. We're going to talk a little bit about how the solution works, and then we're going to wrap it up with a nice summary and have you on your way to lunch if you're on the East Coast with us today. So as far as Digital Designs, we put a nice graphic up here for you, which kind of depicts exactly how we view ourselves, old and gray hair with a lot of experience. So we've been around since 1980, gained a lot of experience in this world, and we're providing software solutions for procure to pay, invoice automation, and obviously what we're talking about today is electronic payments. This graphic, if you can see, it kind of depicts that we deal in some very complex environments out there. And kind of finally, we manage millions of transactions a year. We've been doing this, like I mentioned, for over 30 years. We do most of these transactions in the cloud, although we do have enterprise or on-premise installations if that happens to be of interest to you. And right now we're well over 500,000 users in our cloud, so it's quite extensive network that we manage. Let's talk a little bit about electronic payments and what does that mean and how do we define it within the world that we're talking about today. And simply put, electronic payments are alternative payment methods to more traditional payments such as checks. So how do we get rid of those checks and how do we make your operation a little bit more streamlined? So in our world of B2B, we kind of look at electronic payments as obviously purchasing cards that deals in the expense management realm of your industry or your company. We deal with T&E cards, travel and entertainment, also kind of on the expense control side. And with the product that we're talking about today, and Comdata, who's one of our partners, as well as MasterCard, we have what's called a multi-card, which kind of combines those two cards, so you only have to have one card to manage. And the big thing that we're going to kind of talk about and hone in on is this this world of virtual cards, dealing in the world of AP automation, which targets your supply vendors, it targets utilities, office supplies, mobile carriers, and those type people. The more bigger spend type items that you have versus a purchasing card might be used for maintenance or going down to Lowe's and buying $300 worth of miscellaneous items. And then obviously you have a payroll card dealing with payroll as well as the benefits within that area. So we really want to hone in on this purple item over here of virtual cards and where does that fit. So virtual payments are really an electronic payment alternative to check printing. It can reduce check printing by as much as 75% in your operation. The big item is that it can also provide a revenue stream for your company. We're going to talk a little bit about how in the world can I pay a company and actually create revenue. It's kind of an interesting concept. And then kind of the good news in all of this is you're going to process these payments just like you process a check. It looks and smells like a check to your operation, so we're not going to come in there and turn your enterprise upside down, and it's quite easy to implement this type solution. So when we talk about it looking just like a check, it literally, from a file perspective, does just that. We're delivering a transaction that has a specific vendor identified. It has a certain amount for that particular transaction down to the penny. We have a very unique, trackable, very secure 16-digit MasterCard number that is tied to each payment. And obviously we have a defined time period that you define whether you want this transaction to be good for a day or 30 days. So that's kind of left up to you on how long you want that payment to be able to be done there. Just as a side note, you can also have multiple payments with one supplier or pay multiple invoices with one supplier, and we also provide that detailed reconciliation information for your vendor, so they don't have to worry about trying to figure out what the payment's for. The file that we send to your vendor is extremely detailed, and they can use it for easy reconciliation. So why do you want to use these virtual payments? Well, as I mentioned earlier, one thing is it turns your AP department into a cash generator via rebates. You're getting a rebate based on every dollar spent through the system. It's a very easy 60-day implementation with digital designs. We're going to hand-hold you through the entire process, so you don't really need to know a lot on day one, but you're going to be very, very involved and very educated when we're done. And for those of you that have thought about putting AP workflow automation, procure-to-pay type solutions into your enterprise, this is an excellent way to fund that. We can do both those projects simultaneously. And probably the big thing is you can reduce check printing. We see a lot of companies that get as much as 75% reduction in check printing, which obviously reduces you having to handle check voids and reissues, uncashed checks, and obviously fraud that's getting worse by the day out in the marketplace. We get to significantly migrate your enterprise off paper-based systems, so we don't have a lot of paper floating around, and everything's you're able to see the results and be able to look up what the system's doing at any time on a web-based browser. This is kind of an interesting one. We can go into details more on this on a one-on-one, but a lot of people don't realize that when you're paying through this virtual card, you totally eliminate the 1099 reporting that you have on any V-payment transaction. That 1099 reporting, as of a new law back in 2012, goes back to the processor and not to you. So that's kind of a nice value add as well. And I'll end this slide with Gartner saying that the largest cost reduction and revenue generation opportunity for corporate finance. It's truly a very fast-growing segment of the market that Chris is going to share with us, and Gartner obviously agrees with that. So I'm going to turn this over to an industry expert, Chris, and let him kind of share with you what the market's happening, and then we'll be back and talk a little bit about how the solution works. So Chris?
All right, thanks, Miles. Good morning, everyone. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through a brief overview of how virtual cards have grown within the B2B or the business-to-business payment space and what that means for you. So last year, a research company called CFO Research, they interviewed a number of CFOs from various companies regarding their accounts payable processes. And looking at this study, I pulled two key messages from these interviews. The first is all these CFOs agreed that B2B payments are definitely moving away from paper checks and onto electronic payments. And I imagine most or all of you agree with that, and that's why you're on this call today. So the second message I took from these interviews is that many of these CFOs indicated that their intent to move in the near term from paper check to electronic payments, and they really want to take advantage of the benefits, some of what Miles had mentioned, take advantage of these benefits and really streamline their processes and generate a new revenue stream. Sorry, I'm just having a... So when you look at credit cards, there have been a number of innovations with credit cards. It started with the traditional card, and that's really, when you look at that, that's just your standard plastic card where that's given to a number of employees throughout a company. It's really made to replace petty cash and just make it more convenient. We need to buy miscellaneous items. And what that does is it gives, you have control as a company, you have control of this card still, but you're giving it to a number of employees. It typically covers spend up to $2,500. The next evolution of the card is the AP or the Ghost cards, and that's really just an account number. AP cards could be plastic, but you don't need the plastic. Those are really account numbers that will sit either with AP or with a division, and that division can use that account number. That's going to be an account number where you're going to use it when you're making purchases, either online, by phone, or by fax. Typically, these purchases aren't going to be done in person. Then you move into the virtual card. Obviously, that's what we're talking about today. The virtual card is certainly one of the most requested products we have today out there. And this is also known as a single-use account. The virtual card, Miles had alluded to this, one of the reasons that it's so attractive is the ease of implementation, but also the controls you get with a virtual card, the security you get with a virtual card. It's a great product. It's helped companies put larger transactions onto a card solution or electronic payment. And when you look at virtual card versus traditional card, the average spend on a traditional card is about $450, with the average spend, or I should say average transaction size on traditional cards is $450. The average transaction size on a virtual card is $4,700. So it's 10 times greater transaction size on the virtual card. So that's something that is definitely helping companies get more spend on electronic payments. The next evolution or next generation of credit cards is what we call straight-through processing. The first three that I mentioned are supplier-initiated payments. That means that the buyer sends over the credit card information to the supplier inputs the account number into their point-of-sale system, then the payment is processed. With straight-through processing, that's a buyer-initiated process. That means the buyer, when they're ready to pay, they'll submit the request into the system, and the money is automatically sent directly into that supplier's bank account. The supplier doesn't have to do anything. They'll get a message saying, you've received a payment in this amount from this person or this company. Now, you're probably thinking this sounds a lot like ACH, and it is very similar to ACH. The two key differences, though, are, one, you can earn a rebate with a straight-through processing, and two, you don't need to exchange or hand out your banking information, which I know is a concern for a number of companies, having to give out all that banking information to multiple customers. So you avoid that, and you get a rebate. So that's something that's still in the early stages, straight-through processing, but I think over the next 12 to 24 months, you're going to see a lot more use with straight-through processing as it gets more mature. So that leads to the question of, have these various card solutions really helped companies move from paper checks to electronic payments? The short answer is yes. And according to a study by Association of Financial Professionals, AFP, they do this study every 3 years. Back in 2004, 81% of B2B payments in the U.S. were done on paper checks. Fast forward to 2013, that number drops to 50%. That's a significant decrease in check payments. And during that same time, card payments for B2B transactions have increased. So some of you may be familiar with RPMG. RPMG is actually the initials for two professors, Richard Palmer and Mohammed Gupta. And these two gentlemen facilitate a purchasing card study every other year. During the off years, they facilitate a study on T&E cards. They've been doing this for well over 10 years, so they've become very well known in the industry. The information that they provide is looked at as being very reliable and very helpful. So this is great information. So the chart that you're looking at now shows how purchasing card volume has grown. When I say purchasing card, that does include the virtual card as well. It shows how the volume has been growing and is expected to grow through 2018 and then beyond. When you look at 2013, $245 million in spend, I'm sorry, $245 billion in spend, about 40% of that is virtual card. So virtual card is making up a significant portion of this spend. Now, while it does make up 40% of the spend, virtual card is growing at a significantly faster rate than the traditional purchasing card. So if you look at this chart, what it's showing is in 2018, traditional purchasing card spend is expected to have grown 45% over the 2013 spend, and virtual card is expected to grow 69% over that same period. The 54% is the combined growth rate. But really what I wanted to point out here is just virtual card continues to grow for the reasons that we've mentioned already. So it's something that, again, more companies are looking at, taking advantage of, and getting value from. So why are virtual card payments growing? There are a number of reasons listed on this page. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to highlight just a few. The first being, and the biggest reason, is more companies are targeting suppliers that are already accepting cards. That's sort of the low-hanging fruit, just being able to say, hey, you accept card, we'd like to pay you by card. So more companies are doing that. Then the second one is more companies are simply saying, hey, you know what, we want to use a virtual card to make payments. So that's increasing the spend. But the real key point here I want to point out on this page is greater acceptance of virtual card by vendors. This is something that historically vendors have not been quite as open to accepting the card because, as I mentioned, you're getting larger transactions taking place on this card. So vendors have said, hey, we don't want to incur the fees, tied to a card for these larger transactions. The smaller ones, okay, but these larger ones, we prefer a different type of payment. However, that's changing. And really the reason that it's changing is vendors are seeing more benefit, and these benefits that they're seeing outweigh the fees that they would incur. So one of the first benefits that they see is the speed of pay. With a traditional payment method, vendors will typically get paid in about 38 days. With a virtual card, the payment drops to 4 days. That's a huge decrease in payment time. So that's very enticing to the vendor, and that's something that they appreciate and certainly can leverage that. Another reason is the reduced manual labor and paperwork. Again, that works both on the buyer side and the supplier side as well. Reduced bad debt, another great advantage for the vendor. The increased working capital, that really ties into the whole shorter payment cycle. And then the elimination or reduction of buyer side errors. And then the two more points, the next 2 points in my mind are extremely critical for reasons why the vendors are accepting cards. The first is sorry about that. There's research that indicates that buyers are more likely to select suppliers that accept cards. So when you think about going out to, say, a restaurant or a store, you may go to one restaurant or one store over another if they accept card. So that's, a good reason for vendors to accept cards. The second reason, sorry about that advancing too quickly, the second reason is card acceptance has been shown to promote loyalty and stickiness with customers. So again, these are two really big reasons why vendors are accepting cards. And quite frankly, card acceptance is almost becoming table stakes, where if you want to compete in your line of business, you need to accept card because more customers are demanding card acceptance and more vendors are offering card acceptance. So if you really want to be competitive, you now have to accept card. And on the right here, you can see that I have two quotes here. The first one talks really about getting paid more quickly and being able to leverage the working capital. The second one talks about reducing labor and also reducing errors. This illustrates, the value of the card, as we mentioned here. So what does this mean for you? Again, some of these we've already talked about, but eliminating manual processes, reducing costs associated with paying by a check, easier tracking and reconciliation. Since all of these payments are electronic, makes it very easy to track and reconcile. So now you don't have to sit at your desk and wonder, gee, when is the mail going to deliver that check? It can be followed all the way through the process because it is all electronic. And then, as Miles had mentioned, you can earn a rebate on your spend. So this is something where a number of companies are looking at it and think it's a great opportunity, not just to streamline processes, but to earn that rebate. So if we look back at 2008 and 2009 when the recession was really starting to hit a number of companies, we had many companies reaching out to us proactively and saying, listen, we need to continue spending to keep our business going, but we need help in streamlining those processes and potentially generating some type of revenue stream. So that's where the virtual card came into play. Companies implemented that, and again, going back to what Miles said, it was easy to implement, so it's something they could do quickly, and they realized the benefits of the card. They got a rebate, and this is something that continues through today, where more and more companies are leveraging this. So on that note, I'm going to turn it back to Miles.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate that insight into the market. So let's dive into a little bit about how this solution works and how you can implement it within your particular organization. And as we said early on, our whole goal in Digital Design's purpose is to make this extremely simple. So we're going to make it easy from the time you want to start looking at this to the time you may implement it. We're going to provide the software and the integration into your core accounting system. We provide the implementation services that it takes to roll this out. We're also going to coordinate the vendor enrollment, a key thing that we do that a lot of other banks and people typically do not do, which is help you with the total vendor enrollment and get your vendors involved in this particular process. And obviously the key thing is we're going to pay you the rebates on a very timely basis. And to net all that out, we're just going to manage the whole process for you, so it again makes it very simple for you to do this in a very quick time frame. So basically how this system works is that you obviously have a MasterCard network that manages billions of payments around the world, and to kind of hone down into your particular situation, we've got your company and our core software product that we call Doc Agent, and it creates a payable file or you create the payable file, and we automatically pick up that file off of your system and we send it to Comdata for processing. We haven't mentioned a whole lot about Comdata, but they're a leader in this business, and they act as the issuer and the processor of B2B payments and particularly card-based products for MasterCard. So it's their job to assign a virtual MasterCard number for that particular payment, and in your case you may have 100 different payable files that you need to be done, and each one of those is going to get its own unique number, and that's what Comdata does for that. They select or assign the particular dollar amount along with the detailed remittance advice for that particular vendor. And at that point, your vendor receives a payment notification, typically via email. We could still do snail mail if you want, but typically it's going to be via an email. The vendor processes that payment as a card, and once they've accepted the payment, their bank receives cash within a 24 to 48 hour closing period. Then from there, Doc Agent, again, our software is going to provide you a reconciliation file and pays you the rebate for each of the transactions that happened. That's kind of a simple overview of how it works and who the players are. So we want to kind of jump in about the most important piece of all of this is vendor enrollment. It's all about the enrollment. Obviously, the more vendors that we get enrolled, the higher the ROI is for your particular industry, and the higher the rebate. And some of the things that we really focus on, and a big difference between the team that we presented here today and some other people in the market, is that we're targeting 100% of your vendors. You know, we don't care if you're spending $5,000 with them in an entire year, or you're spending $3 million with them a year. We have a plan that looks at every single vendor, versus many people are just going to kind of cherry pick maybe your top 10 or 20% of your vendors only. We're going to help you do some goal setting and tracking to see how the program works. We're going to perform the enrollment along with Comdata's help of doing various enrollment programs, and those particular programs include personal vendor enrollment calls. We're going to actually call vendors that spend anything more than $25,000 a year with you and personally invite them and urge them to sign up for the program. We have strategic letter campaigns and email campaigns that go out to the vendors explaining the program and how it's beneficial to them. We also provide invoice stuffers as kind of an education, as Chris mentioned, education in what this product is all about and what the solution's about is key. And then it's an ongoing engagement. We don't stop in the first 60 days. We're going to constantly go back to the vendors on a timeline that you approve to try to solicit them into the program. And then we have a nice vendor portal that allows your particular vendors to go sign into and sign up for the program. Your vendors are going to see some value in this program as well, not to mention that they're going to, as Chris mentioned, add a little bit more stickiness to you as the customer. A recent survey by Kaiser Associates shows that about 82% of the vendors say they are likely to take a virtual payment from their particular customer. They get a very prompt settlement. They're going to reduce their DSO and other financial and gain other financial controls by putting this system in. They get very detailed remittance advices, standard format for importing into their system, unlike a ACH, which may not have quite a detailed remittance that they would like to have. This is a extremely detailed line item by line item advice. They're going to be able to maintain a preferred vendor status. Obviously, their particular customers are going to treat them, or you're going to treat these guys as a preferred vendor, because obviously you're earning a significant amount of rebate going forward. And once accepting virtual payments, a lot of these vendors are finding that about, or at least 23% of them are saying that they're getting increased business, and Chris alluded to this as well, being that once you accept cards, you're likely to be able to find more and more customers because you are accepting the card. So let's talk about a little bit about, hey, you know, I already bank with Wells Fargo, or I bank with B of A, and their treasury guys have offered this to me. How does this solution compare to a bank? Well, first of all, banks have a lot more priorities in their bag of tricks than a virtual payment, and this is 100% of what we do. We don't do anything else and don't offer 152 different products out there. So we obviously feel that we can do it much better. Bank programs, again, will target just your top spend people, which it averages about 10 to 20% of your vendors. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 times bigger than that. Because we're targeting 100% of your vendors, we have typically, as a rule of thumb, about 30+% enrollment in our particular program, whereas a bank is getting maybe 10%. Banks also don't have what we call a pay-for-you program. There's a lot of money sitting there that can be gained through mainly the utility business. Almost all the utilities across the country, whether it's a water utility, whether it's Verizon Mobile, AT&T Mobile, whether it's a power company, just numerous utility type payments can be done, but typically they only accept it via the phone. So Comdata has put together a very nice call center that actually enters in all that information on your behalf, so your AP department doesn't have to go sift through all that and be interrupted by how to do that. So that's what we call a pay-for-you program that has significant value for, again, some low-hanging fruit. And also our rebates are very competitive to the banks, and our enrollment is much higher. So when you add the rebate plus the 3x enrollment that we typically see, your net dollar rebate is typically going to be significantly higher. So one of the things that we want to share with you, and we're not going to go into a lot of detail here, but we spend a lot of time with your vendor spend list and how do we get them involved. And you can see here that this is just an example of companies that have vendors in the 1 to 3 million or greater than 3 million. We deal with the strategic calls of $25,000 a year to $1 million in spend, and then we go all the way down to vendors that you spend less than $25,000 with. So we do a very detailed analysis of this based on some information that we get from you, and you can really look to see how this program can impact your business. In addition to that, I know a lot of you out there that are on the phone with us today are CFOs and controllers. A lot of you still kind of play the float game and maybe dragging vendors out a little bit, but we'll show you a cost of capital analysis that actually shows you that your cost of working capital and the amount of working capital you have actually increases with a virtual payment and makes your vendors happier, and you have still got the working capital or more working capital that you expect. And we can go over the details of this when we do more of a one-on-one type session. So how do you engage with us? Well, obviously we urge you to schedule a one-on-one call to discuss your company-specific goals and how we might be able to help. We want to, discuss the program, including the software, the project management, what's the implementation look like, what's expected on your end, and how we can help you get this off and running without worrying about your budget for 2015. As I showed you earlier, we're going to give you a very detailed cash back analysis. We're going to give you a detailed cost of working capital analysis that really makes this program a no-brainer. So in summary, what I'd like to kind of leave you with here is that with digital designs at your side, this is very easy to implement. This isn't a very tough project. It's not going to require much of your time. And I think the key thing is it's free. There's no software fees in doing this, and it can literally help fund a lot of the projects that you may not have gotten funded for 2015. And when you do the analysis with us, you can see exactly what that might mean to you. For instance, we've seen that you can offset probably 50% of, say, a project to do AP invoice automation, which deals in invoice workflow and three-way matching and procure-to-pay type situations. And our solution that we've talked about today is one solution to manage everything. We talked about the virtual payments, but we also tie in or can tie in your travel and entertainment. We can tie in purchasing cards. We can tie in payroll cards so that you have one nice management dashboard. If you already have some of those programs implemented, we can work in conjunction with those so that we don't disrupt your current situation. But to let you know that for some of you that haven't gone full steam ahead on cards, we can bring the whole process to you. So with that, I'd love for you guys to call me personally, Miles Busby at milesbusby@ddilink.com. You can call my direct line at 704-790-7126, and we also have our website. We appreciate you joining us, and if you hang on one second, I'm going to do a quick question for you here so that you can see how we can get some information to you immediately.
Thank you, Chris and Miles, for that informative webinar. If you have any questions regarding how to implement electronic payment automation in your office or if any of your questions that were left unanswered during the webinar presentation, we would be more than happy to answer them for you. You may contact us at 800-948-6293, extension 126, or email us at mbusby@ddilink.com. We hope that you will join us for our Accounts Payable Automation webinar presentation, Tuesday, February 10th. To find this information and more, follow us on LinkedIn at Digital Designs Inc., Twitter at DocAgents, and you may also refer to our website at www.ddilink.com for continuous webinars and valuable updates.